The legend of vampires has been around for thousands of years, which can be said to have existed alongside human history. Vampires do not mean only blood-sucking ghosts. Various peoples around the world have their own version of vampires, starting with vampires. Blonde-haired foreigner, Chinese vampire, Japanese vampire to the Malaysian vampire type known as Penangkulang. However, the vampires that we are all familiar with nowadays, most of them have changed their species and appearance. This may be due to the influence of books and movies, hundreds and hundreds of them, all come from Europe and America. The origins of the vampire legend come from the Far East. It spread via the route from China's Tibet, India via the so-called Silk Road into the region. Mediterranean Sea. This legend spread throughout the Black Sea countries. Balkan Peninsula, including Hungary and the land that we are familiar with, Transylvania. Nowadays, our conception of vampires tends to be more along the lines of a blood-sucking demon, one who comes back from the dead, can only survive at night, can transform into a bat. These qualities are characteristic of European vampires and in horror movies. In fact, vampires have many different qualities in different areas. Let's take a look at them. What are the vampires of each nation like? The Slavs are the richest vampire nation in Eastern Europe, spanning areas from Russia, Bulgaria, Serbia, and Poland. These beliefs have been firmly established since the 8th century. The largest vampire gatherings were in the Magyars, which is now the border. Connectivity between Hungary and Romania. The word vampire comes from their language. Vampires have long, dirty fingernails and hair. The corners of his mouth were stained with blood. They don't like to hang out with people. The Slavic way to defeat vampires is to have a barbecue. Burned alive or sprinkle holy water on it. You can put them from the church. This is because Romania is surrounded by countries of the Slavic peoples. Therefore, it is not surprising that their vampires lean a little towards vampires of Slavic descent. In the native Romanian language, vampires are called strigoi, which can refer to old owls or demons. There are many types of strigoi. Most strigoi are spell users. They become vampires when they die. These strigoi remove their souls from their bodies to gather on full moon nights. Or they go out to suck blood, most of which are family members. Or nearby neighbors, people born with the hallmarks of a demon, tail, fangs, unkempt hair, or people who died unnaturally, or die without having received the precepts. They have the right to become vampires. If a family has 7 children of the same gender, that's the 7th person. A vampire is born. The women around there had to eat salt when they were pregnant, to protect the child in the womb. As for the last ones, who definitely have the right to be vampires, those who were bitten by vampires. There is another legend that closely related to the story of vampires. I think all of us are probably familiar with it. That is the human story. It's the wolf. The textbook says that there is a group of humans. When the day comes, good night, it will react with the moon or sun and can transform into a wolf, black dog, or even a pig. The academic term for these mutants is called lycanthropy. Romanians have as many legends about these things as there are. With vampires, it is said that vampires will break open their graves and rise up into the earth when the time is right. It had a pale face, and its breath rancid, and absolutely refuses to touch food that contains garlic. Any household that suspects that a deceased family member has become a vampire usually goes to open the grave to see if the corpse is still there. They have time to explore the grave. As follows: if it was a child, it would be 3 years after death, 5 years for young people, and 7 years to open for grown adults. The methods for killing vampires seem to be the same everywhere. That is, when Romanians encounter or suspect that someone is a vampire, they would be caught and stuffed with garlic until their mouths were full and then burned on fire. Any grave suspected of harboring a vampire will have a silver bullet shot through the coffin lid if a vampire is hit by the jackpot. The coffin will be glowing with fire and look quite beautiful. For movie lovers, gypsies really seem to be indispensable for vampire movies. It can be called guest stars make it all happen. And legends as well, gypsies play a close role with vampires. Bram Stoker's famous literary work Dracula is, it is said, about the gypsy girl who faithfully looked after Dracula's coffin. Gypsies originate from northern India and migrate until reaching Europe around the 14th century, around the same time as the birth of the tyrant Vlad Dracula. The religious beliefs and mysterious rituals of the gypsies had quite an influence on Europe at that time, especially beliefs about spirits and the world after death. Not long ago, various legends that were told among gypsies have also been incorporated into the European stories of Romania and Turkey. Of course, these stories include there's also the matter of vampires. The former home of the gypsies, India, a source of Eastern philosophy. There's a story here. Rumors and legends about things resembling vampires abound. For example, Buddha, the spirit of a person who has died. Unusually, the spirit still resides in the body. These ghosts will wander around, walking the lonely roads at night, waiting, attacking, and drinking human blood as food. The most famous vampire of India is Kali, or the goddess Kali. She is considered to be a part of goddess Durga. Kali has a ferocious form. Wearing a sacred cord made from a skull, the goddess Kali is the origin of the story of the vampire gypsy. Because of faith. And faith in her remains attached to the gypsies even though they have moved across seas and settled for hundreds of years. Kali's name changes according to the calling of each line of gypsies. There's one gypsy vampire named Mullo. Has very interesting behavior. It is said that most of these Mullos are revenge ghosts, coming back from the dead to collect debts from their enemies by sucking their blood for food. Female vampires are even more frightening. These vampires can live like ordinary people and survive by feeding on their husband's strength, causing them to. They are nervous. Gypsy vampires are not just dead people. Pets or fruits and vegetables are also vampires can do that. Pumpkins and cucumbers that have been left in the house for a long time with no one eating here. One fine day it can move on its own. It made a deafening sound and dripped blood, looking very gruesome. Vampire sickness in the 18th century. Vampire legends have been familiar to various hemispheres for ages, but would you believe it? The British are only just now getting to know about them. Pyrrhy took place in the 18th century, during which time the fear of vampires was rampant in Eastern Europe, spreading to England. Chong villagers are very afraid. Even when walking around, there was a bunch of garlic hanging from one's body. There was a debate among the leaders as to whether this was actually possible or not. and what policy should be used to calm the country down. At that time, communication was not very developed. But it was strange how quickly the rumors spread across the country. Some things are very unbelievably funny. For example, an army of vampires invaded a palace in Hungary and attacked the soldiers and men. Everyone in the palace was vampires. Even the news that the Kremlin is full of vampires has come out. The bonus that accompanies the rumors is the hunt for vampires. People were grilled every day for being vampires, many of whom were brutally tortured before being stabbed in the chest with a wedge. This shows Europeans' fear of vampires very well, whether vampires actually exist or not. Many legends of vampires have been written in history.